Okay, so picture the scene. It's midnight, January 1st, 1983, the very first minute of the new year.
Right.
We're in the World Mission Center in New York City. The Cold War is absolutely freezing. The cultural mood in America is tense.
To say the least.
Oh.
And you have Reverend Sun Moon standing in front of this just packed crowd of his followers.
It's a huge moment.
It is. I mean, you have to remember the context. This is the early 80s. The Moonies, as they were called, are probably at the absolute peak of their controversy in the U.S.
For sure. There are deprogramming attempts happening, legal battles everywhere.
Total public outcry. And yet, you get the sense the feeling in that room isn't fear. It's something else.
It's electric. And the speech he gives that night, well, we have the full transcript right here. It's titled Home Church, Our Land of Settlement.
And honestly, calling it a sermon doesn't quite do it justice.
No, not at all. It reads more like, I don't know, a tactical briefing for a spiritual special ops team or something.
It's a manifesto. It really is. And that's exactly why we're digging into it today.
Right. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're not here to, debate the theology or pick a side on all the controversies from back then.
Yeah.
We are just looking at this one primary source text to try and understand the internal logic of the movement.
And that's the key. Because when you actually read it, you see it's not chaotic. It's a very structured, almost mathematically precise worldview.
Yes, exactly. It's internally consistent.
It explains why they do what they do. And it completely flips the script on how we normally think about things like, suffering, politics, even love.
So let's jump right in. The first major theme is it's really counterintuitive. I think we can call it the theology of persecution.
It's the absolute foundation of the entire speech. Yeah.
So normally, if the whole world is yelling at you, calling you names, trying to shut you down, the normal reaction is to think.
Maybe I did something wrong.
Right.
Or at least, maybe I should just lay low for a while.
Right. You assume that all that negative feedback means you've made some kind of error. That's just how we're wired. But Reverend Moon starts this speech by asking his followers, do you like to receive persecution? And he admits, of course not. Nobody does. Even God, he says, would say no to pain.
But then he makes this incredible pivot.
He argues that if everyone is yelling at you, you haven't failed at all. You've basically hit the spiritual jackpot.
He completely reframes opposition as a form of validation. He takes them on this quick tour of history: Abraham, Jacob, Moses, Jesus.
Right.
And his argument is that every single major religious figure was hated in their time. So comfortable religion is actually suspicious religion.
There's that one line that really stood out to me. He says, whenever a religion becomes established and settled, God seems to turn away.
Exactly. He's arguing that comfort is a sign of stagnation. Persecution means you're growing. He actually uses this biological analogy I thought was really interesting.
Oh, the immunity thing, yes.
Yeah, the immune system. He says the fall of man was basically humanity getting sick. So if humanity is spiritually sick, how do you get better?
You have to build immunity. And you don't build immunity sitting on the sofa.
You build it by surviving an attack. So all the persecution from the media, the government, even from parents, he frames all of that as the vaccine.
It hurts, but it's what makes you strong.
Strong enough to handle God's blessing, is how he puts it.
And he actually breaks this down. It's like he gamifies the suffering into different levels.
Like the video game, yeah.
He says Judaism faced national persecution, then Christianity with the Roman Empire faced worldwide persecution.
And now, he says, the Unification Church is facing universal persecution. He makes a big point of saying there's no difference anymore between East and West, North and South. He asks them, is there any part of the world which is unaware of us?
Which, for 1983, is a pretty fair point. They were global news.
They were. But he frames that global resistance not as a PR failure, but as proof that they're the central movement of the age. The logic is, the size of the shadow proves the size of the object casting it.
Wow. Okay, so that leads us to what I think is really the emotional heart of the speech. Because it's one thing to say suffering is good for you, like a gym coach.
Right.
But he goes way further. He redefines who God even is. And he just throws out the traditional image.
The almighty king on the throne.
Yeah, exactly. He says that image of God, all glorious and untouchable with a scepter, it just doesn't match the state of the world.
And then he gives this really vivid, almost heartbreaking analogy of the sick patient.
Oh, this was powerful.
He asked the audience to imagine the world is their child, and that child is dying in a hospital bed. If you're the parent, do you sit on a golden throne wearing a crown?
No, he says God would kick his throne and crown away.
And run to the child.
Even in his pajamas.
Mm-hmm.
That little detail, it's so human.
It is. It just completely changes the dynamic. He's telling his followers, God isn't some distant king. God is a desperate, grieving father.
So the logic follows. If you want to be close to God, you can't be comfortable. You have to be in the agony with him.
Yes. Suffering becomes the way you connect. If God is suffering and you're comfortable, there's a disconnect. But if you're being persecuted, you're actually sharing God's reality. You're holding his hand in that hospital room.
It's an incredible motivator. It turns all their hardship into like an act of divine intimacy.
It explains so much about why they were willing to endure what looked unbearable from the outside.
Which is a perfect segue into the next part, the culture war. Because this persecution, according to the text, it comes from the fact that their culture was just so incompatible with 1980s America.
A massive clash of civilizations, yeah. And he talks about it very openly in the speech.
He even mentions the whole sitting on the floor thing. I didn't realize that was such a point of friction.
Oh, it was huge. It's a symbol of rejecting Western comfort. He points out that these young Americans, raised with armchairs, are suddenly sitting on the floor, even at their parents' houses.
It makes their families uncomfortable. It's a signal. I am not one of you anymore.
And the money. He says, while everyone else is out partying for the holidays, his followers are on the street fundraising. It's a total inversion of what you're supposed to do.
He even brings up 30-year-old women with no dating life. In the secular world, that's seen as, what, strange? Repressed?
Absolutely. But he flips it. And this is where he tackles the brainwashing accusation head on.
That was the word of the decade, right? Deprogramming, mind control. It's amazing to hear him just address it.
His defense is fascinating. He basically says, society calls you zombies or robots because you can't be bought.
Right. He says they try to seduce you with money, with sex, with comfort, and you just don't react.
He even says that when their theologians go to universities, the professors give them eye tests.
To see if they have glassy eyes.
And he frames it like a badge of honor. He's telling them they think you're a zombie because you're focused on a reality they can't even see.
Wow. So it's a total us versus them fortification. But the most radical cultural tool he talks about is the marriage strategy.
The blessing.
Yeah.
The mass weddings.
Yes. We've all seen those images. But he talks about it as almost like a biological engineering project.
That's a great way to describe it. He's very direct. He talks about creating multicolored families, white, black, yellow.
He mentions the reaction in Japan, right?
Oh, yeah. He talks about the commotion it caused.
Yeah.
He says he matched Japanese women with black African men. Now, in 1983, Japan, a very homogenous society.
That would have been culturally explosive.
Unheard of. He acknowledges that parents cried, they complained, but he told them this is the only way to really dissolve the boundaries.
It's not just about tolerance, it's about forcing genetic and cultural integration.
Exactly. It's engineering unity at the family level. If your grandchild is a different race, it becomes a lot harder to hate that race. It makes the idea of an enemy biologically impossible.
Okay, so we have the theology of suffering, the cultural separation, but then the speech pivots into what I would call game theory. He lays out a specific strategy for winning, and he uses this analogy I was not expecting.
The blackjack secret.
It is so Vegas. Break this down for us.
It's so unexpected, but it perfectly explains his view of salvation. He asks, how do you make Satan surrender? He compares Satan to a casino owner. And in blackjack, there are rules. If a player hits 21...
the house must pay. It doesn't matter if the owner likes you or not. The rules are the rules.
Exactly. The house has no choice. So Moon argues Satan is bound by a similar universal law. And the winning hand, the 21, is this. You have to love God more than the intensity of the persecution you're getting.
So if Satan hits you with 100 points of pain,
you have to respond with 101 points of love for God.
And then Satan busts. He has to sign what Moon calls a certificate of victory. He presents this as a literal physical mechanism.
He said, I knew the secret about Satan. I knew how to hit the blackjack.
That is such a key insight. It makes suffering transactional. It's not just endure this because it builds character.
No, it's endure this because it buys your victory. It turns endurance into an offensive weapon. If you don't break, you're not just surviving. You are actively forcing the enemy to surrender. You're bankrupting the casino.
And speaking of strategy, we have to talk about the media. He spends a pretty good chunk of the speech basically bragging about the Washington Times.
Which is a huge historical moment.
Yeah.
The paper was founded by the church in 1982. So in this speech, just a year later, He's explaining the strategy behind it.
And he uses another great analogy, the honeybee.
I loved this one. It's pretty cynical, but it's also kind of brilliant.
It is.
He says in winter, beekeepers feed their bees sugar syrup. The bees are starving. They don't care where it comes from. They just need the food. He compares the conservative establishment in D.C. to those hungry bees.
And the Washington Times is the sugar syrup.
Exactly. He says at first, everyone dismissed it as the Mooney caper. But, and this is his read on the media landscape, there wasn't another strong conservative voice in D.C. at the time, so the conservatives had to read it to get their sugar.
He says they became addicted to the honey.
Oblivious to who was feeding them. That's a direct quote. He claims they're reading it and saying, so what, this is honey.
It's intellectual guerrilla warfare. We have the content you crave, so you'll eventually have to ignore who we are.
And he says it's working. He contrasts it with the Washington Post, which he says toppled Nixon. He claims the Washington Times is making bureaucrats tremble.
So that leads us to the ultimate goal. The title of the speech is Home Church, Our Land of Settlement. Now, home church sounds pretty small scale.
Like a Bible study in someone's living room.
Yeah, but that's not what he means at all, is it?
Not even close. In this text, home church is a territory, a spiritual jurisdiction. He gives a specific number, 360 homes.
So each member gets an area of 360 homes, and they are responsible for the spiritual state of that whole grid.
It's like being a spiritual precinct captain. But the theological weight he puts on this is just immense. This is the whole settlement idea.
The idea that God has been a gypsy.
Yes. He paints God as a wanderer, never having a place to truly rest because the world is enemy-occupied territory. And Moon claims the period from 1945 to 1985 is the 40-year wilderness.
Which means, in 1983, the clock is ticking. They're almost at the end.
They're right at the threshold of crossing into Canaan, the land of settlement. But, and this is the catch, they can't settle unless they build their home church. God needs a place to land.
And the stakes he lays out for this, I mean, they're terrifying. I had to read this part twice. He makes a distinction between paradise and the kingdom of heaven.
Which, for most people, are the same thing.
Right, but not here.
No. In this theology, paradise is like a nice waiting room. It's not the final destination. And he says very explicitly, you cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven until you somehow create your own home church base here on the earth.
So what happens if you don't? If you're a good person, you pray, but you don't secure your 360 homes.
He says you'll be accused in the spirit world, but not by God.
By your own family.
By your own family, your ancestors, your spouse, your children. He describes this scene where they will confront you and point their fingers, asking, why didn't you push harder? Why didn't you fulfill the mission?
Why didn't you save us when you had the chance? That gave me chills. It's so visceral.
It completely inverts the normal idea of love. Loving your family usually means spending time with them, being present.
Right.
Moon argues that true love means sacrificing all that comfort now to secure their spiritual status later. He says you can't truly love your own family without doing the mission first.
That is an unbelievable psychological burden. It weaponizes familial love to drive activity.
Yeah.
If you slack off, you're not just feeling a leader, you are damning your own children to that waiting room forever.
The pressure is immense, but again, with the internal logic. If you truly believe the house is on fire, the most loving thing you can do is drag your child out the window, even if they're kicking and screaming.
And he ends it all with this massive, almost impossible geopolitical goal, the Moscow Rally.
You have to remember, this is 1983. The Soviet Union is the evil empire. The idea of any religious rally in Moscow, it's unthinkable. It sounds completely insane.
But he is dead serious about it.
But he is. He frames it as the final stand against communism, the end of the 40-year wilderness journey. It's their Jericho moment.
So if we put it all together, you have a group that believes persecution is a vaccine, that they have a blackjack secret to force Satan to lose, they're using media to infiltrate the culture, and they're in a race against time to build these spiritual territories.
So their grandma doesn't yell at them in the afterlife.
Exactly. It's a total all-encompassing system. Every negative thing the world throws at them is just more proof that they're right. Every sacrifice is an investment with a guaranteed spiritual payout.
And the end goal is to finally give God a permanent home, a place to stop wandering.
It really changes how you look at their actions in the 80s. It wasn't just random zealotry. It was a calculated high-stakes game.
And the currency of that game was suffering.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to chew on. The speech ends with a demand, a pledge to prioritize this mission above literally everything else.
Above your comfort, your sleep, your money.
but also above your immediate family for the supposed sake of your family. And that's the thought I want to leave you with. Imagine a worldview where the only way to prove you love your children is to neglect them for a higher cause. Imagine the psychological weight of believing that saving the world is the prerequisite for even being allowed to love your own spouse.
It redefines love as a reward you earn for later, not something you live in now. That is a powerful and very dangerous engine for human behavior.
And that, listeners, is a heavy place to live. Thanks for diving deep with us into the logic of the land of settlement. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.